Hi Tam, welcome back. I hope you had a really good week since I last sort of saw you in a video. So today we're going to look at the execution of Anne Boleyn and the reasons for that. So you should have done your summary lesson on Henry and Anne, and now we're going to look at the downfall of Anne Boleyn. So it pretty much starts when she doesn't give birth to a boy, when she gives birth to the future Queen Elizabeth. So these are all Henry's worst nightmare, basically. He's gone through all of this trouble, all of this legal things. He broke away from the Catholic Church, which to us sounds a bit silly, but at the time that was like a massive scandal. He did all this so he could marry Anne, and now she's gone and given birth to a girl who can't be queen because girls can't inherit the throne. So not looking good for Henry. After that, he thinks, oh, maybe they can try again to get a boy. Anne has several miscarriages, and Henry starts to think that this is a sign from God that this marriage is not working. So he's having doubts about his new wife, and she was new. Remember, she was already pregnant when they were married. So they were actually only married for 3 years before she was executed. Another factor is Henry has his jousting accident. So he falls from his horse while he's jousting, and he's unconscious for about 2 hours, and they thought that he was going to die. If you die without an heir, that's sort of like royal scandal. It's atrocious. You know, Elizabeth I didn't have an heir. They had to give it to the Scottish cousin. Nobody wants any Scottish cousins to be queen or king. Okay, well, not queen, king. So after Henry has his jousting accident, he has a permanently damaged leg, and this affects him the rest of his life. He then this is when he becomes very overweight and not as active. Of course, he never jousts again after this. And it also makes him very grumpy. If you're in permanent pain, you're going to be quite grumpy. So this is when we get the image we know of Henry VIII, the kind of grouchy, overweight king. And soon after the jousting accident, supposedly due to shock, Anne goes into premature labour and the child doesn't survive. So again, she's had another miscarriage. A second reason for the fall of Anne Boleyn is his next wife, Jane Seymour. He's already had his eyes on Jane. She's part of a really important family in the court, the Seymours. Her uncle is very influential in Henry's court. He worked with Henry's dad, Henry VII, so he already knows the family. And Jane and Anne are very different. Jane is very sweet, very kind, very sort of simple, loving, kind character. Anne is much more feisty, and she's much more outspoken with her opinions. She also fell out with Cromwell over the treatment of Protestants in the country, over what they should do with the money from the dissolution of the monasteries. She wanted to build schools rather than give it to her husband. So there's all sorts of conflict going on there. And remember, in Tudor times, it is not okay if you are a woman to say whatever you like, because women are seen to be not as equal in society. If you remember a few weeks ago, well, months ago really, wasn't it? I showed you that picture of Tony Robinson dressed up and being dunked in the water for being a scold for talking out as a woman. If you've forgotten about it, I'll link it again for a laugh. So the third reason is, now we don't know whether this really happened or whether Henry just decided he wants to be rid of Anne. So she was accused of being unfaithful to him. One of the musicians in the court was taken to the Tower of London and tortured, and eventually said that he had had an affair with Anne Boleyn. Now, if you're being tortured, they're probably going to say whatever they want you to say, so that's not very good factual information. However, so that was their first person who said that they'd had an affair with Anne. A few more people went on to be accused of that, even her own brother. So people were saying that she was so desperate to give the king a son, she would commit incest by, you know, sleeping with her own brother to be able to make that happen for Henry. So this is really the nail in Anne's coffin. She's been accused of having affairs, being an adulterer, and she's arrested and sent to the Tower of London through Traitor's Gate, the whole shebang. And here is where she awaits to have her trial. Literally, this happens really, really fast. Within 3 days, she's executed. So they very quickly found her guilty, and the final kind of parting request that Anne had was she wanted a French swordsman to be her executioner, whereas before it was usual for English executioners to use an axe, which wasn't as precise. If you think of Nearly Headless Nick in Harry Potter, like, his head doesn't come off with an axe, and it's obviously very, very painful way to die. Whereas this French swordsman was very experienced and could kill her with one blow of the sword. So that's it. Anne's gone, and Henry doesn't exactly hang around. Literally the next day, he's engaged to Jane. And then like 3 days later, they were married. Now, before I sort of got into teaching Henry, I thought that Anne and Henry's marriage ended because he executed her. It didn't, actually. The Archbishop of Canterbury, when she was found guilty, had their marriage annulled. So they weren't married by the time Henry executed her. Obviously no excuse, but there we go. So that is the fall of Anne Boleyn. And today you're just going to work through the PowerPoint that I've sent you. And as usual, any problems, send me a comment on Show My Homework. And hopefully I'll see you in school really soon. Should be seeing you next week. Okay, have a good week. Bye.